AA Beyond Belief is a podcast by, for, and about people who have found a secular path to sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. Ooh, that's a little on the loud side. Okay, here from the beautiful studios in the amazing city of Kansas City, Missouri, I am John S., and I am joined by my co-host Angela B. from our satellite location in Boise, Idaho. Angela, how you doing?
I'm good, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. And so we've been traveling through the 12 steps in our secular way, and we
Yeah.
have finally reached step 12.
Woohoo.
I know. So that means that we've had a spiritual awakening
Yeah, as the result of these
as
steps.
a result of these steps. That's right. And so we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yep. That's about step 12.
Yeah.
So yeah, I looked at the alternative 12 steps in the secular guide, and they pretty much, say it the same way. They do practice the principles of these steps in all our affairs and carry the 12-step message to others. And they highlight that the principles for this step are commitment, self-discipline, and service to others. And that makes sense to me. That's kind of how I understand it. Was there anything that your sponsor had you do for
Oh,
step 12? Like, did you guys have a
no,
party or get down on your knees and
no, not like
hurrah?
that.
No?
I was thinking about this. Step 12, I think, for me has just been a way of life. And it's just been
Mm-hmm.
something that has evolved over time since I've been sober.
Yeah.
And I was thinking back about all the experiences that I've had in AA over the last, 31 years,
Mm-hmm.
and how step 12 has kind of come into my life in different ways. And what I find interesting, I guess, I was thinking at a meeting yesterday. In fact, I was sharing at a meeting yesterday that I was in this meeting yesterday, and I'm like the oldest person in the room. I've been sober longer than anybody. And there's a lot of new people there who are like, within a few months sober, maybe a year sober or whatever. They're all starting out and they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt so inadequate because it's been so long since my last drink. And I'm so much older than them. I just don't see that they can relate to me.
Mm.
And I was just thinking about that. I just feel like my role is so different now. I just feel like almost like a bit of a dinosaur. But when I when
Yeah.
I think when I think back when I was starting out, I think that some of my best work as far as, on the ground with alcoholics was when I was fairly newly sober.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this happens a lot now, but we used to get phone calls at our group,
Mm-hmm.
and they would take us out on these actual 12-step calls where you'd go to someone's
Yeah.
house. And, I remember the first time I did this, I don't even think I was a year sober. And I went out to this guy's apartment with a old timer from the group who's really experienced with this. And when we got to this guy's apartment, and it was a mess and everything, the guy was still drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember from reading the big book and everything I heard in AA and all this stuff, it was like, oh, don't mess with anybody if they're drinking. You have to wait till they're remorseful and hungover and stuff. Well, anyway, so this guy was just taught this old timer that I was with. He was just start talking to the guy, regardless of whether or not the guy was sitting there drinking. And I don't know, I just remember from that experience that, okay, I guess you don't really have to do this by the book. And I was just really blown away by the love and concern and compassion that this old timer that I was with was showing for this person who was still drinking. And
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, we left that guy's apartment, and then we went out and we had lunch or something. And from that time on, me and that old timer who went on that 12-step call had a bond for the rest of the time that I knew him in AA. And that,
Yeah.
I think, is the strength of AA. I mean, the strength of the 12th step. It wasn't so much that that person that we went to visit was got sober. I don't know whatever happened to him, but it did strengthen my sobriety and it strengthened my friends and it brought us together. So it kind of brought me even closer to another person, which was helping me. So that has always been what has been behind my approach to the 12th step. But in the early days, it was a lot of hands-on physical, I mean, carrying people to the hospital, stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas now it's much more like being the old guy in the room who I guess shows that you can be sober and have a stable life, you know? So
Right. Yeah. No, I know that I needed that when I got to the rooms. You know, I needed people that I could, you know, emulate, who had stable jobs and stable relationships, and you know, possibly owned property, and
right.
had a car that maybe
Right.
was, you know, less than a decade old, and
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that's
all of
not
that
me
kind of
actually, but
stuff. Well, that's why I said possibly, because
right.
yeah. But yeah, because I was one of the people that, you know, didn't lose everything
Yeah.
when you know, I was in my alcoholism. I had never achieved anything to lose, and so I still needed to learn how to, you know, achieve all of that kind of stuff. And so yeah, so I needed people that were older, as well as I do remember a woman who was in my first home group, and she only had like 3 months more than me, but you know, we were kind of bonded because when, you know, I met her and heard some of her story, it wasn't that we had the same story. It was more of a time thing that, you know, she had made it, you know, 3 months, and that seemed doable. And so, you know, if I did some of the stuff that she did, maybe I could stay sober, you know, for at least that long. But I also have my eye on people who were, you know, living lives that seemed to be what I was going for, you know, what I wanted my life to look like when I grew up, even
Right.
though I was grown up when I got there. But yeah, so people who were balanced in life, because yeah, when I got there, I really knew that I wasn't balanced, and that's what I was looking for. I think I phrased it as a, you know, I had family members who were able to stay sober, but were still crazy. And so I was hoping that
Yeah.
I would be able to figure out a way to stay sober and you know, live a better life. And yeah, and so that's kind of what's happened for
Hmm.
me. As far as 12-step calls, yeah, we don't really do that.
No.
So I know that I've heard some of the older people in AA talk about it, you know, some of them wistfully, because I think they've had experiences like yours that were
Yeah.
very meaningful to them. But, you know, in this day and age, I think it's somewhat
It
dangerous
is.
to be able to do that. And perhaps it was then too, but I think
Yeah.
particularly now. And so I don't recommend it for people. I don't know that I would go on one unless it was somebody that I knew and had either worked with in some way or kind of knew their
Yeah.
situation, because yeah, safety and
Yeah.
you know, and
It
even
actually
just two
started getting
women
dangerous
together.
too.
Yeah.
The last physical step 12 step call I went on, this was a really weird one. And it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years
Mhm.
ago or whatever. The guy, we went over to his apartment and he was talking suicide. And we got
Mhm.
in there and he had a gun on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was scared
See.
to death. We
Yeah.
got out of there. We called the police. We said, "Hey, this guy's talking about killing himself. He's got a gun," you know, and the police went over
Yeah.
and talked to him, um, which was the only thing we could do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it is like nowadays I don't know if I would do it either. I think that was the last
Yeah.
time I've ever done one, and I think the last time I ever will do one.
Right. Well, you know, and the necessity of them, you know, I think in the beginning, of course, you know, people didn't want to deal with alcoholics, and there wasn't anybody else really, other than the church to try to deal with these people. But today there is, you know,
Yeah,
we have places for them to go. We have professionals that can work with them, and you know, most of the time, if they're in, you know, some acute, you know, distress, that's who should be doing the work with them. And then
you're
we
right.
can, you know, be the community and the support after they're
After, that's right.
you know, physically stabilized. Because if they're, you know, yeah, on something, and or extremely, distressed mentally, there's nothing that we could really do or that we should do. We might make the situation worse. So
No.
I generally suggest that people, if somebody calls that they know and is in that situation, to call the police or call one of the agencies that works with that more directly.
Yeah.
So
And you're absolutely right. If you are going to work with somebody who, if you're dealing with somebody who is coming off of alcohol, it can be, of course, really dangerous. And
for them and for you.
Yes, for them. Like I remember this one guy took to their emergency room, and as soon as we got there, he started having a seizure. And Angela, I don't know how I would have handled it if it would have happened before I got to the hospital.
Right.
It was so frightening. Oh God, I've just seen a lot of stuff. So yeah, so it's like,
do we need to do a trauma podcast right after this one
so.
to help you work through some of those?
In a way, though, in a way, it was actually good to see all of this stuff that I saw up close like that, because I mean, I got to see the physical aspect of alcohol, people coming off of it, going in the worst way. And I don't know, it just really made an impression on me, and always has, that how just the physical nature of the addiction to alcohol, just how bad it really is.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I could see how that would be helpful for some people. But I think that for some of us, we grew up with, that kind of an environment. And so many of us, and I think it probably depends on the age when you get to the rooms too, because I got here in my 30s. So I had seen stuff just with friends and things and situations. So it wasn't,
you didn't need that education.
Yeah, it wasn't that helpful. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that there's a lot of factors that can come into, whether that would make a difference in your sobriety or not.
You are so right. So. I think about my friend Ben, and he would talk about how when he was a little kid growing up and his father was a really bad alcoholic, how he would just, have to clean up after his dad, or his dad would be passed out in the bathroom. And God, I didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah. All of the Al-Anon, Alateen things of we're a normal family, and we're just dragging dad in from off the front lawn, the next morning, but this is completely normal, nothing to see here.
So if you grow up with that, you don't necessarily have to see that anymore.
Right. But again, it was helpful for your experience. So,
it was part of my experience,
we share
part of my
that
story.
We share that because there's somebody who might relate more to that than they would to me. I'm hearing more and more about people who are like, no, I had a great childhood, and I still became an addict, and it's like, okay, and so I think all the stories need to be included so that people who are out there that are listening can identify with one of them, or if they do identify with one of them, they know that they're not alone, and that maybe they can get some help if that's what they need.
But this step is more than just about that, though. This is more, it's more than just about physically even helping alcoholics. I also see it as just service in general to my community, to my family, to AA, and not just that, but taking everything that I've learned in my recovery from the time I started to where I'm at now, and using that for any problem that comes up in my life, That's what 12 is to me.
Yeah, the thing that when I was, researching and before these, we do each step, I look at several different books, and, Josie's Beyond Belief, 12-step stuff, and the alternative steps. And the thing that really spoke to me this time for step 12 came out of Roger C's, the little book, A Collection of Alternative 12 Steps. And it was on page 44, Stephanie Covington, who wrote A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps. What she writes for step 12 is, with recovery, this can mean that we offer a straightforward explanation of the 12 steps, as well as our own personal experience, how we reworked, translated, revised, or otherwise molded the steps until they were relevant to us. We all have more to offer than the party line and by the book resuscitation of the steps. We can share our story in any way we like. And yeah, I think that kind of sums it up for me on how I think of step 12 is that, you know, I'm sharing my story, my recovery in whatever way I can. And sometimes it's, you know, within AA, and sometimes it's within the secular AA community. You know, some of it is doing this podcast with you, just participating in meetings. And then outside of it is, you know, trying to live in integrity. You know, that helps people as well, you know, to identify with me, or they, you know, appreciate when I'm kind or offer grace in difficult situations. And all of that, I think, is part of the 12th step for me. One of the things in Joe C's book from September 20th, he was talking about the 12th step is more of a responsibility and stuff. And he said, when anyone anywhere reaches out for help, we will not complacently hope that someone else will help. And that made me laugh, because I honestly have sat in meetings where, you know, I didn't want to raise my hand to sponsor, or, you know, do some of the stuff that we generally do when we're, you know, working within the 12th step. And so that made me laugh, and reminded me that, you know, that I've done that, and I see other people doing that. But I think in general, most people really, you know, take this seriously if they've gone through the steps, and are willing to help other people. And then it just takes some time to learn, you know, the best ways to do that, and
Yeah.
you know, what's effective, what's not, and, you know, boundaries and all sorts of stuff. So it's like you get to learn all the 12 steps again in a different way when you start to sponsor.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
true.
generally what a lot of people think of as the 12th step, is then starting to sponsor and possibly doing more service work within, you know, the AA service structure. But really it's, you know, it's doing anything where you're sharing your experience, strength and hope, and living in your own integrity. And people can see that and start to do that as well if they aren't. So.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, someone has actually called in, and he's been waiting for like
All
4
right.
minutes.
Cool. Yeah. Great. Let's
gonna
take
get him
some
on.
calls.
Hello.
Well, hello, fellas and ladies. It's Glenn G from sunny Atlantic Beach, Florida.
Oh, hey,
Hi,
Glenn. How are you?
Yay.
Hey, girl. How are you? And hey, John, how are you?
Fantastic.
Yep. Awesome.
Great. Well, I saw your post the other day, and I thought, you know, let me put this in my calendar and check in with my crew. Even though I haven't been in much contact, I thought I'd say hello. So everybody sounds like they're well, yes?
Yeah, we're doing good.
We're
I'm
doing good. Yeah.
So, Glenn, can you?
Same here. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, do you have anything to say about step 12 by chance?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay.
Of course.
Lay it on us.
I've got it. You know, I have a hard time talking, so yeah, I'll try my best. So I was listening to Angela. I just came on a few minutes ago and was listening to Angela. And step 12 is a big part of my recovery today, obviously. It consists of service work, helping others, and in the traditional sense, I keep my recovery semi-private in my business life and in my personal life, other than people who know me, which is most people eventually. So I don't wear it on my sleeve there, but step 12 for me is share the message of when people remark all through my recovery, man, you don't drink and you do so well, or this, that, and the other. I share how and why.
Yeah.
I have a couple of great 12-step stories. I heard a little bit of John say, and I didn't catch the first of it, but you know, I don't do a bunch of responding to calls anymore either. But the biggest mistake, and what I share with anybody about 12-step work in my experience, is this, that we did a 12-step a couple of years ago on a girl that parked out in front of my house and felt really secure in, you know, being there with knowing I was a safe guy. And we got her like an intervention, and got her all coached up and ready to go to treatment. Oh, we just forgot one thing. We didn't have anywhere to take her.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so that was a real learning experience for me, that, you know, in today's environment of,
Oh, did I lose you?
I'm not hearing him either.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, while we wait for Glenn to call back in, I'll talk about him. That one of the things that I do know about Glenn and the 12th step is that I met him in.
I think he's back
yeah.
now.
Oh, there you go. Yay. Well, dang it. Now I'm going to have to talk about you later.
yeah, we can talk about me all you like.
I think I may have accidentally hung up on you, Glenn. I was playing with my phone and I lost you then.
No, it was actually on my end. I had another call come in.
Oh, okay.
And hit the wrong button.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was trying to share a little bit on the 12th step, and that I still do 12th step work when it's safe. And I heard a little bit of your story, and I think that along with a lot of other things in life is something that has changed. And I don't feel spiritually or otherwise bad or neglectful. I'm not willing to go into certain areas and put my life and myself at risk to do 12-step work that's been described in the book or other stories. If other people choose to do that, I think that's great. You know, my 12-step calling now, as I call it, is to be there for the people like myself, who anybody else that's listening, of course, doesn't know our interrelated stories. One of the reasons I called in was to, you know, say hey to Angela, that, you know, her being at that first international convention is a huge part of my recovery. And I've been able to pay that back tenfold in 12-step work, in meetings, in service work. I'm the DCM for our area.
So
I
awesome.
give back all the time, you know, and I think that's 12-step work.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other part of the traditional 12th step is to practice spiritual principles in all our affairs. Well, you know, without going into can an atheist have spirituality, which of course my experience is yes. Yeah, I try to practice some type of principles in all my affairs. It's part of my recovery, and it's part of what keeps me sober, right?
All right.
So yeah, I have 12 steps, you know, all over in my life. And then the other part of the 12 steps that I was going to share is that I no longer raise my hand and volunteer to sponsor and things of that nature, because my plate is full, man.
Mhm.
I sponsor 6 to 7 people at a time. Right now, I've got 5 men and 1 woman, and you know, I'm okay with that spiritually. It doesn't bother me. You know, if someone asks me or comes up to me after a meeting, which happens a lot when I share about my atheism and that AA works for me being an atheist in traditional meetings, I usually always get approached. And what I tell them is, sure, I'll be glad to be your temporary sponsor until we find you one. Call me every day, you know, or something to that effect. But my plate is full, guys. You know what I mean?
Yep, we know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, the 12th step is definitely a part of my recovery, and I would say probably one of the biggest parts of my recovery, with my involvement with service work. As you both know, my involvement with these state conventions, which, you know, I've got that going on again this year.
That's great, Glenn.
You know, yeah, and I think you know, it all comes around full circle. Primary purpose is to be there for other alcoholics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, thanks. And I just wanted to say hey and stay in contact, and I think this is really wonderful. I'll try to keep up a little better, and you know, we've got lots of things going on here in Jacksonville, and you know, things are good here. Things are responsive, and things are good here. So
Good.
I'll share some of that with y'all off the podcast. I'll be in touch, I promise.
Okay.
And just wanted to say hey, and then that we're alive and well here.
Good deal.
I guess it's a little sunnier and warmer here than it is your way, yes?
Probably.
Definitely.
The sun's out here, but it's a little bit chilly, a little bit on the chilly side.
Yeah, it's chilly and the
Yeah,
sun
it's,
is nowhere to be seen in Boise.
Oh, Glenn, I got to ask you something. As a football fan, Glenn, so you watched the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
But you were rooting for the
every
Chiefs.
second of
You were rooting for the Chiefs, but you
I
bet
was.
against them. You lost some money, didn't you?
Yes, I did, man. I sure did, but I made up for it in the second half because I could tell they were going to win the game.
Oh, really?
I really, yeah. And I'm a season ticket holder. We have a pro team here in Jacksonville, if you want to call it that. But I'm yeah, and I'm a real fan of Patrick and what he's done as a player and as a person.
He's a good guy.
And I've been to Kansas City, to give an unsolicited plug and ate the best barbecue I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
But I've been to the old Kansas City Stadium, and what an experience and what a place that is. I love that city.
Yeah,
it's a great city. Angeles City is a great city. I'm more in love with Boise every day. I just can't get there.
I've never been there either. I've been to Idaho before, though. It is nice there.
Yeah. No, we're designing it that way.
Absolutely cool.
Quite difficult. Just kidding.
It's absolutely cool, and you're missing it. I will be back there for sure in the near future. But I'll be in touch with both of y'all about the state convention coming up in August.
Cool.
They are going to give us another workshop. When I say us, it's going to be a agnostic freethinkers workshop, and
yay!
Going to let us share some meetings. And at our next committee meeting next week, I'm going to try to get them to put us on the flyer advertising that there will be agnostic freethinkers meetings like they do LGBTQ and other things of that nature. And my experience around here has still been more positive than negative. And, I'm really grateful for that. I try to share that too every chance I get.
Yeah, that's awesome, Glenn. I just think it's amazing what you've been able to do in your area, coming back from the convention and starting a meeting and then, getting a service position and then becoming DCM and all the stuff with the area. I just think that it's so cool and that a lot of us could use, your message and tools. And so hopefully you'll be able to share some of that at some of our conventions coming up as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're trying to get an organized group together. We've already got 2 of us that were in Austin, 3 of us actually, and for the November, the DC convention, and I'm trying to get a bigger group. And the other thing, if I have a second, I wanted to share, and I'm going to be in touch to understand more, and also going to get a hold of the Canadian guys, is I'm going to make some road trips to some other meetings here in Florida. And try to start networking to begin a roundup. I see they have these roundups out west all the time, and I think that Florida's ready for one of those.
Nice. Yeah. I think that would be great. Yeah.
I really think so. Are you guys headed up to Detroit by any chance?
Yes. So one of the things, Langley, BC is doing a Pacific Northwest regional in May 16th. If anybody is, remotely near that area, you can find out the information both on AA Beyond Belief and on the Secular AA website and on AA Agnostica. so I'm going to that. And then Secular AA will have a hospitality room in Detroit. We're still, getting some of the groundwork laid on being able to get the message out to Secular AA members on where it's going to be and how to be involved. But that information should be coming out within the next couple of weeks. But yeah, they have given us a hospitality suite. So it's, an official one. It'll be listed under ICSA, I believe, under the International Conference of Secular AA. Yeah, so we're going to be hanging out with the young people
Cool.
hospitality suite and all of those things, because they put all of them in one hotel. So I'll be sending out a newsletter and some more information about that pretty soon. But we're going to be in Detroit, and then we're going to have a bunch of information there for the DC conference, and hope to get people over there as well.
Where will you post that information when you remark like I'm going to post that? Will that be on the net? Will it be on a website? Where will it be?
Yeah, that will be everywhere. So one thing is I already have a list, and you're on it, of people who have filled out a form, I guess that AA Beyond Belief and AA Agnostica had put out on people interested. So anybody who filled out that form, I have their name for an email list. So it'll go out to that list of people already interested. It'll also go out to anybody on the Secular AA email list from the Secular AA website. And then we'll be posting it in the private Facebook groups as well. So the Secular AA Coffee Shop, the Sober She-Devils group, and the AA Beyond Belief group. So pretty much everywhere that we can, as soon as we have things shored up, so that we can give everyone the information that's the most correct at the time.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And as you know, I'm a man of action, so I'm ready to help. You just let me know how, and I'll be glad to. And coming back full circle to the 12th step, I guess you could say another interesting new type of 12 step that I did just a couple of weeks ago involved that She-Devils group, that we had a woman come to our Saturday morning meeting who wasn't at all comfortable, didn't feel safe going to regular meetings for reasons that are none of, is not important. And I was able to turn her on to that group, and she's been participating and really, real excited, which is totally cool. That's 12-step work also.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's an amazing group. So thank you for sharing the message in that way.
Oh yeah, no worries. And thank y'all for your service. And I really look forward and miss both of you. And I will be seeing you soon. So y'all have a great day, okay?
You too. Nice
You
talking
too,
to you,
Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
They have a nice community down there in Jacksonville. I really enjoyed my visit there, and the meeting I went to at their group. When I left there, I felt like, I could probably live in Jacksonville and be pretty happy there, I think. So it was a really nice area. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. When I met him, he was and he doesn't mind my sharing this, having a hard time. I had just, kind of come out as atheist in his area, and there were no meetings. This was at the Santa Monica conference. And so there was myself and then two members of my home group, Gary and Mike, that had gone down to that conference, and we were just sitting outside in the lovely Santa Monica weather with him, and sharing, how I started my group, with the other three people, and Gary and Mike had been, core members and carrying on the group for a very long time, and just some of the stuff that we did that helped us get along in our community with the other AA groups, and then I hadn't heard from him, and I went offline, stopped social media in 2016, and so I had no idea that he had gone back to Jacksonville and started a meeting and did all this stuff, and so it wasn't until Toronto that he came up to me at the at the conference there and shared with me, all that he's done. And so it's amazing. It's really a very cool thing
Yeah.
that he's been able to do. It's not always as easy in every area, as we know. There are some places that are a bit more resistant to groups like ours and stuff. So, like Texas and other than Austin. And so that I think is what makes it even cooler that he was able to just, get renewed, I guess, in a non-spiritual way, and have the impetus to go back and get things going there. And that it's just, an amazing example now for other AA groups and secular people of how to get us included, so that more people can get sober within AA. So it's very cool.
I like that ICSA is going to be in there with the other special purpose groups, the young people and LGBTQ groups and so forth.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's how I've always kind of thought of us as like a group like that. It's an AA group, AA meetings, as a special purpose AA meetings, I guess, for people who just want to have a secular approach.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So it's very cool. I haven't heard anything on us having speakers on panels yet, but I did, send a bunch of information to GSO and to people in charge. And so if I hear anything back on that, I don't know if they'll, contact people directly or if they'll contact the secular AA board to get people. But if I find out more about that, I'll definitely share it. But at least having the hospitality suite and having it be an official one. So it's going to be on the app that's used for
that's nice.
Conference, so people can find it, as well as the printed material. So yeah.
Wow. I wish I could be there for that. I've never been to one. There's just no way I could swing it though. There's other things that we need to do. I'm definitely going to be at the ICSA conference in DC. And then I think my wife and I are wanting to take a trip someplace too. So
very cool.
Yeah. So back to step 12. Where are we?
Yeah. Step 12 with a kind of a detour off into football land. And
but I want to give the impression that I think that it's all about, dragging people to the hospital and so forth like that. It totally isn't. It's just, like I said in the beginning, it's just how I live my life now. It's just the way I feel about, wanting to give back in any kind of way. And much like what Glenn has done in Florida, he's done a tremendous amount of 12-step work by just making it possible for people to find a secular meeting in Jacksonville,
Exactly.
It's just,
yeah.
And it's very rewarding too. So,
I agree.
Well, if anybody else wants to call, our line is open. It's 844-899-8278, and we welcome your call. Talk about whatever you want to.
Right. Football, tattoos,
tattoos, whatever.
Yeah. I have one tattoo. It's like a sun and the moon thing. I was going for like a carpe diem, carpe noctem type thing in my early 20s. And I got it in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd spent a summer doing an internship with an ecumenical ministry, of all things.
Oh, wow.
It was when I was going to become a minister. And and a group of us, one of the kids was like, I'm going to get a tattoo and I need to get it at this one place in Kansas City. And so several of us went over and I'm like, maybe I'll get one too. And then he chickened out. And so I had to go through with it just to, show that I'm more of a man than he is, I guess, at the time. And so, so I, Kansas City is responsible for my one and only tattoo. And so the only time I've been there too, but hopefully I'll be able to get there another time. But so that's my digression is, I have a not into football and not familiar with the Super Bowl stuff, although I'm, congratulations.
Thank you.
But
I'm not a football fan until they actually go to the Super Bowl. Then I'm a fan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. No, around here, everyone's a Boise State Broncos fan. We've got the Smurf turf and stuff. And so, it's a thing, but it's never been my thing.
Yeah. So anyway, after we oh, I'm stuck. Okay, so now that we've kind of wound up with the steps, we were
Yeah,
talking about maybe doing some other topics.
right.
And did you mention a topic if you wanted to explore? Um,
Yeah, I thought that at some point, if people were interested, that we could explore more mental health
mm,
and AA, and so some of the experiences that people have had, and as well as our own experiences of working, with what's deemed outside issues.
right.
In AA, so that there's a little bit more knowledge of people's actual experiences. Sometimes people experience that they're told that they're not supposed to be on
Mm,
antidepressants, or that they can't get sober, they're not sober if they are, all sorts of stuff. And so I thought that you and I have experience with
yeah,
being sober and working with mental health stuff as
yeah.
well, and in AA. And if people are interested, that might be a good thing for
I
us
think
to
so.
talk
I think
about
so. It's something that's
and
pretty close to
explore.
my heart. It's the
Yeah,
mental illness has been just tore my family apart. And when I
yeah.
was a younger person, getting sober, depression was a huge problem for me. And so I would have people tell me that that was a normal part of getting sober, and they dissuaded me so much from getting help for
Mhm.
so long. And I'm, I put it off, and I'm just really fortunate that I lived through it. It made the whole thing way more difficult than it needed to be. So
Yeah.
when I finally started, I started off with therapy, and then I went into getting medication, and it just turned my life around. So yeah, but unfortunately I understand that they still talk about that.
Yeah, certain places do, and certain groups of AAers and things like that. So it's not prevalent everywhere, but you can still hear echoes of it in different places. And so I think it's important to get that message out there that one, it's not like some sort of official AA thing that
Right.
that you shouldn't go to counseling and take medications as prescribed by doctors. It's, I think, actually in the big book that you should,
That's right. It
do
absolutely is, isn't
stuff.
it?
So it was written in the 30s, but that's still pretty prevalent and good advice of seeing people who can help you with whatever it is going on. AA is not a fix-all, although
No.
some people, truly believe it is. But I think particularly those of us in the secular community are aware that it's not, and
Mm-mm.
that there are lots of resources, and most of us use a variety of resources
Mhm.
for our sobriety. So we don't just do AA. Some people go to, Dharma recovery groups, or go to, SOS, Save Ourselves, or Women in
Mhm.
Recovery, or SMART groups, or, all sorts of stuff. And so, I think us talking about it some more. And I
Yeah.
know your podcast is great for that. You have a lot of different people that you've had on, and I just
Mhm.
listened to the one with Jon Stewart the other day,
Oh,
and
did you?
I hadn't heard that one before, and so that it's interesting. It'll be good. I know that he's going to be at the DC conference,
Yeah.
ICSA, and I'm very curious to see how his thoughts, have either evolved, or what
Yeah.
he thinks of, what secular AA has become in all of the new meetings and things like that. So
Yeah.
so that
It
was
will be interesting
interesting.
to see what he has to say. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He's gotten like really busy because his band has started back up again.
Right.
But when I had that podcast with him, he at that time was he's pro-choice. He says, he's
Mhm.
not anti anything. He's for
Right.
whatever works for you. And he did think that AA as a whole, like the AA World Services and so forth,
Mhm.
should be more open and reaching out to other support groups and so forth
Mhm.
to somehow pool resources and everything. And AA has always
Yeah.
been kind of, we do our thing. We don't want to get mixed up with anybody else. So
Yeah.
but yeah, he's a very thoughtful person, and he has spoken a lot about AA, and he's pretty knowledgeable of the history of it too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to hear him at the conference.
Yeah. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
So no other callers, huh? Nobody wants to
No,
come and call in
there are
and
people
talk
in
to
the
her?
chat room though. Bob B says that mental emotional health would be a good topic.
Oh,
Indeed.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So definitely we'll have to do that. Something I was thinking about that too is it only takes like it's always the small minority of people that do these screwy things. Seriously. And,
Right.
and it makes it seem like everybody is like that. It's like
Yeah.
they're the ones that give AA a bad name. It's the one guy
Right.
out of 30 in a meeting that walks over to you and tells you not to take your meds. That's
Right.
the guy, and it's
Yeah.
like he does it and no one else knows he's doing it, but
Right.
the message gets to you.
Yeah.
It's just because I've never had like a whole group of people come to me and say, "Oh, John, you shouldn't be taking your medication." There'd
Right.
always be that one guy that'd pull me aside.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. That's been my experience as well. It's usually one, maybe two people, but they're
Yeah.
usually extremely loud.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
those
I think
people.
there's
They have those
something,
strong opinions.
yeah, something that we respond to. Maybe they touch into our negativity bias, or I don't know what it is, but it is funny that the way we respond to stuff like that too, like doing this
Mm.
podcast with you, and it's also on YouTube, and somebody did a thumbs down on, I think, my story, like on my actual story.
I know.
And and I was like, what? Somebody thumbed down my life story?
I know.
Yeah. And
It's
so
cruel.
it reminded me of the Alanis Morissette song of, and something of, I think it's an ironic, when oh no, it's that she'd be okay even if she got the thumbs down. I'm like, yeah, I relate. Alanis, I
Yeah.
really I got the thumbs down. But yeah, there are lots of people who liked it. I've got a lot of good response, from
Mhm.
it, that people have heard my story on your podcast, and that, yeah, it was the first time that they'd heard of a secular person, using the steps, or a secular version of the steps in somebody's life specifically.
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of literature out there now that talk about, the 12 steps in
Mhm.
a secular way. But there wasn't a lot of people talking about how they actually worked the steps in a secular way. And so, yeah, so I
Yeah.
get lots of good things from that. I've never received, something where somebody's like, yeah, that's just dumb. Maybe they thought it, but obviously this person did, because they gave me a thumbs down.
And who knows? Maybe he's just maybe
Yeah.
he's some like fundamentalist guy who just doesn't like
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
like something. I don't know.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, there is
I
a
get
woman
that.
in town that doesn't like me. And so, I'm
Oh
guessing
yeah.
she
Oh
found it
yeah.
and gave me the thumbs down. But, I can't tell who it is, which is
No.
probably good. And, but yeah, it was like, what? The thumbs down on my life story of how rude.
I know.
You
I know.
know? I may not appreciate someone's personality, but, the life story, it's what people have experienced. That's one of the things that I do like about most AA groups, though, most AA meetings, is the sharing from experience, strength, and hope. Because in general, you don't get a lot of crosstalk, because
Right.
if I share with you what my experience is, you can't say, nope, that didn't happen,
Right.
because it's my experience. And so I think that that's a really, really helpful thing in the rooms. But YouTube and social media is a different story.
It totally is. I often say that I think that Facebook is like the worst place for AA is Facebook, because it's like most of the AA Facebook groups I've been in, I've left because people want to debate and argue. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't do that in AA. I just tell you what it is for me. And it's
Yeah.
my personal thing. It's not
Mhm.
something that's up for debate. I just don't
Right.
get that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I see that even happen in our little AA Beyond Belief group. Sometimes people want to debate this or that. It's like, oh, come on, I am not really into that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think your group, you have some great moderation on it. And I think that a lot of people feel very comfortable in your
Thanks.
private Facebook group because of that,
Yeah,
so
well, what
you
I
do a
do,
good
like,
job.
if somebody, because like we get a lot of people join, and if somebody, don't, I'll throw people out. Like if they just
Yeah.
like are evangelizing or just getting crazy, I've had to throw people out for that kind of
Right.
stuff. But I don't mind if they, oh, I'm pretty loose about most things, but it's just like I've had people that actually preach God at us. It's not like,
Right.
they're gone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a democracy. And,
No, you have your
and I
little
think
Facebook
that's
group for that.
exactly. Yeah. I think that's
Yeah,
a good thing. So,
yeah, you know. Well, this has been fun. If there aren't any other callers, maybe we should start wrapping it up. We've been going for almost 50 minutes. So,
yeah. Okay.
well, it's really been nice chatting with you and doing
Yeah.
these podcasts with you. I
I've
think that
enjoyed it.
oh, you've done a great job, and I'm
Thanks.
glad that we did the second run through because I think you brought a lot to the steps that I wouldn't have caught.
Mhm.
We're two different people and different
Right.
experiences, and your experience was really needed here, I think. So thank you very much for doing
Great.
that. It's
Yeah.
really
Well, thank you for providing a platform to be able to do that, so that people, yeah, in areas who either can't get to a meeting or just are part of traditional meetings and have sponsors that are like, you need to do step 2 and
yeah,
3, which I hear about a lot. Now they know some ways that they can still, do that. And again, for the people that don't do steps that are in the secular community,
mhm,
that's fine too. This
yeah,
podcast probably isn't for you,
right, right.
so we're not saying that you have to do them.
No,
This is more for people that either want to or are in situations where they really need to, in
right,
order to feel like they're part of their community, and just need some options on
yeah.
how to do that, how to get through those
Everybody's different
steps.
at
So
different times in their life. You might need
exactly.
some people like need more structure at one point in their life and less structure at other points in their lives, or
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just, I've been all over the place, even in the last couple of years, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we'll have to
So
continue doing this. So we'll definitely do the mental health episodes soon. And if you'd like to
great.
keep doing these, I'd love to have you on and keep doing podcasts.
Yeah, I would love it.
I
So
like doing this. It's a lot of fun for me. I mean, I just love it. It's just fun. I like everything. I like the equipment, the nerdy stuff, and I enjoy it. But then I also have to remember that it's also actually reaching people in a very deep, personal way. And
yeah.
so that sometimes, if I really think about that, it gets somewhat overwhelming. And I
Mhm.
like to kind of go back to just to having the fun part. But there are people out there that the podcast is like a meeting to them.
Right. Yeah. I people who can't actually leave their house.
Yeah.
I've suggested this podcast for, because then they are still hearing people's experience, strength, and hope, and hearing a variety of ways of getting and staying sober. And, in your style of doing podcasts too, and probably a part of your personality, it's so easygoing and comfortable that I think
Oh, thank
that
you.
helps a lot with people, getting possibly more out of a podcast or out of your podcast than some others, because it does feel very comfortable and open, and
Well, thank
yeah.
you. It's very
So
nice of you to say. I actually had talk about criticism. I had one person tell me that the host of that podcast is codependent with all of his guests. I'm like, damn, am I? I probably am.
I'm not quite sure what that means, but okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to play us out of here with our outro. Uh,
Sounds good.
So there we go. So thanks everybody for listening, and thank you for calling. We'll keep doing more of these call-in episodes. I think they're a lot of fun. Angela, it's been a blast. We'll get back together real soon and do the mental health podcast.
Sounds
And
great.
with that, from the luxurious studios in Kansas City, Missouri, and our satellite location in Boise, signing off. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
There you go. Thanks, Angela.